I ask you the question, what am I doing here? I heard Theo Von once talk about something. You know, he's always saying something. He's always throwing out some kind of analogy that's very much on the fringes of human reality. Like, you know, he didn't say this, but do you ever feel like a plastic bag drifting through the wind, wanting to start again? Katy Perry must have seen that, or maybe got a ghostwriter who saw that. And that person personified a plastic bag drifting through the wind. I see that as someone who was going about their day and they just found themselves in the middle of a moment, just somewhere in the middle of infinite space, and they just happen to cross paths at the right time, just like one of those tumbleweeds in a Western movie. You know, all the sorts of things that had to line up for these things to occur. You know, Theo Von once said, he said, dude, you know, sometimes he must have been depressed, or he was going through something, and he was just, you know, trying out a different method to, you know, process things. What he said was, you know, sometimes I feel like he's just on a treadmill. You know, he's like, sometimes I feel like I'm just doing some guy's errands. You know, I'm just going through the motions of things. I'm just doing things, and, you know, I don't even know why I'm doing them anymore, other than, you know, it's just what I've been doing. And I find myself in places like that from time to time. And often, it really is a mindset thing more than anything. It's a sort of mental model in which you'll look at the world from. Just always on the clock, doing things to check them off your to-do list. Yep. These are the things I said that I wanted to do, and hey, you know what? I did them. And it's not even about the doing. It's about the getting done of it. It's the whole, and that we are so freaking fond of that we look for ways out of the parts of things all the time. I'm extremely blessed. Did you know that? I'm extremely blessed. Do you know what I had to do to get here? God damn it. Essentially, it really was about timing. Something that this space, something about the sort of space that I'm occupying right now. The kind of atmosphere that I'm marinating in. It's allowed me to see life from this perspective that is fleeting and comes around in my life like a Halley's Comet. Every just so often, it comes around back into my orbit. And it's this sort of idea that it's about the patterns, forms, and energies, the emotions that human beings will go through. And how we like some, we don't like others. We've got our own particularities and personal preferences. What I see, have been able to see about the forms is that what ends up being the most conducive thing that leads to a sense of satisfaction in my life is letting go of the idea of reaching for happiness. Happiness is a very subtle, very personal, quiet emotion. Or that it can be. there are times in my life where I've seen myself laugh or smile out in the world, and then I look around, I look out, and it just so happens that a cutie pie just happens to be in the vicinity at the time, and in my mind I think to myself, oh hell yeah, I'm glad they caught me during a good moment. Has that ever happened to you? And that it wasn't even about me experiencing some kind of joy in that moment, but merely that it was witnessed. Oh, dude, that's a happy guy. And it's almost as if the gold shekels of achieving the reputation as a person who is happy is even better than the actual experience of joy. And that itself is a kind of that's a whole way of life that has a kind of inertia that you have an inkling that you want to escape. You want to somehow not live your life in such a way, but you don't even know the first steps as to how to counter that. I have experienced this kind of thing in my life time and time again. You know, especially when I would be on the road, getting onto the highway, you know, perhaps about to enter into a zipper merge situation. And the whole time I recognize there's like a competitive sort of, you know, I've got my shield, I've got my sword, I'm gonna defend my position in the universe inside, you know, in this lane, this car length. And this sort of inertia of being like a small, defensive, aggressive dog backed into a corner. Just, you know, baring my teeth out at the world. Oh, God. And the whole time thinking to myself, dude, life sucks. And it's not life that sucks, it's me. I suck, bro. What the hell is this? What the hell am I doing? Why am I treating the world and other people in this way? You know, I see this selfishness. I see this impatience. I see this scarcity mindset. I don't have time for nothing and nobody. And just this overwhelming sense that there is a floodgate behind me of all these freaking people, and the weight of that. I can't stop and lend you a helping hand, help you up. No, stampede is coming. If I stop, I'm going to be you. And I'm going to be on the floor. And then no one's going to help me. I got to think of me, Lucius. And the big idea of this thing is that I recognized all these things that especially emanating from my own actions, behaviors, and whatnot, and just not liking it very much. and thinking to myself, dude, how do I stop this? What the hell? My life wasn't always this. I didn't look at life like this. I didn't always feel about myself in this way. I didn't always feel about life in general in this way. What the hell is this? Okay, I recognize what this is. How do I change it? What the hell is the antidote to this poison that is radiating off of me? These are relatively significant questions. I was not made for this. This was made for me. And it's gonna work out. I think about ideas such as that one. How much of life I miss, and then I later get to see. You know, how much life we miss exerting energy to change our perspectives to ones that we find more preferable. Oftentimes, I'll miss out on the kind of insight you can derive from the perspective that you're already residing from within, and that I'll oftentimes fail to see the sort of value that can come from all the sorts of lenses that you look at life from, that at first glance you say, I don't like this. What I get to see time and time again is when I allow myself that window to really try on for size. You know, as I am, you know, bland old me. You know? That I eventually find my love finds its way back to me. It knocks on my door, it taps on my shoulder, and it's like, It's wearing those old school masks. It's playing a game of peekaboo with me. It's wearing that mask with the big nose and the mustache and the glasses and the sideburns all attached in one package, and it's like, hey, didn't expect me here, did you? My personal shtick of things is that I wish upon a star. I wish upon all the stars. That whatever these things are, these sorts of breadcrumb memos into time, these sound waves are. I always wish that in the moment of things, I just had one big idea, and it was a kamehameha, a kamehameha. Just one intense freaking burst, just a direct form of energy just coming at you. One big photon at which I come at an idea from, too. But alas, it's hardly ever that. Because if these things just so happen to be the pot of gold at the end of a rainbow, then I guess I really have, there is no like one end-all, be-all answer to your problems. Life itself is one big, slippery-ass butterfinger of a fish. You fix the leak over here, and you think, ha, yes. All my hard work and efforts, yes. That's good. You can wipe the sweat off your brow, put your hands on your hips, and admire all that you have built up, and then you turn around and it's like, oh fuck, some more shit. God damn it. And so you can never really just like compile it in such a way that everything is neat and orderly. And simultaneously, it doesn't make the answer the correct one to say that, oh, well, then you just gotta accept. You just gotta accept that order and disorder are laws of the universe. And if you can accept that order and disorder are laws of the universe, then everything ceases to move forward into time, and you have found yourself in a liminal space where now you become a fifth dimensional being, and you simply operate in the third dimension differently now, because you no longer abide. Time is no longer your master. And you can break the laws of the universe as you see fit. In an artistic way, perhaps, if you'd like to. And that's all good and well, until you realize that it fundamentally does not work like that. Because, stacking all these layers upon layers and layers on layers, you're a social creature. And if you don't have the ability to connect with another person, you might have the most beautiful, life-changing, just like life-altering ideas that totally make sense to you. Or they just hit you in such a way that compel you to feel a certain way. But if you can't share that with another person, it doesn't connect, It means nothing. Dude, there's gotta be, there's gotta be some kind of Asian kanji. There's gotta be some kind of Islamic symbol out there, just a string of Islamic symbols or Asian kanji out there that is the wisest of human thought to ever have been conceived. Like the ending of suffering and the recipe for all your desires. A fertilizer for all the most beautiful things to grow. And yet, if I don't know the language, if I don't have the ability to interpret it, then that paper is as valuable to me as tinder to start my fire. I recognize I always want to start these sorts of things off like some kind of tutorial video, like you'd see on YouTube back in the early days. howto.com or something like that. And they'd give an instructional video. On how to do something. Give you visualizations along the way. And every time I do this, I recognize that I'm doing this thing in real time just as much, and that I have your guess is as good as mine. Because although my eyes work wonderfully, and my body, hey, for all intents and purposes, works wonderfully, that I'm really no different than just a man walking in complete darkness with his arms outstretched, feeling around for stuff. Trying to get a gauge as to the environment that I am within. Which brings forth an interesting question to me. What do I know? Is there anything that I know at all? I know that I do things without completely knowing everything about them before I begin. I know that I measure distances by stretching my arms to fit the space. And I'm like, yep, I'll remember that. I know that I wing it a lot. And I know that I just hope I find my footing along the way. And I know that oftentimes I do. And I also know that I don't, with 100% certainty, find that footing. You know, it introduces just a little bit of uncertainty into the mix. Just a little bit of bitterness. For taste, of course. Just so I can have a kind of humbling experience, and have the gateway for a humbling perspective later on. I heard this Buddhistic story a long time ago, where it says, in the beginning there was nothing. There was no student, there was no teacher. And then, the moment a student formed, a teacher formed very soon after that. And that, in effect, the student brought about the existence of a teacher to be. And I think about that, and I think about how that very idea has illuminated my life. In such a way that sometimes, I'll be very pointed in a specific direction, or very, I've got inertia, I've got motion in one direction or another. It doesn't have to be specific. And then what'll happen is, I'll look out at the world, and I'll think to myself, ridiculous layers upon layers of things in such a way. I'll look at another person. They won't even know that I'm observing them, just people watching or whatever. And various thoughts will come to my head like, does this guy know that I'm watching him right now? What is this guy teaching right now? And it just so happens to be like someone that I wouldn't initially even really initially give a second thought about. You know, they lived a whole life up until this point. They have a whole 60 years of experience that led them to this moment right now to behave in the way that they are moving about in the world in the way that they are. Just all this experience that is in their wake right now. And they are the concrescence, they are the converging point at which, it's the one little thing that you can see on the iceberg that is them. And this is it. This is it. So what is it? So if they are the amalgamation of that experience, what are they, what are they teaching? What is there to learn? What is there to extract from all of this person's experience right now? And then it's in that moment they'll swat away some kind of like gnat that's flying around their face, and I'm like, oh, I'm that gnat. They don't want this. Why would they want something as pesky as me flying around in their vicinity in the way that I am? With my mind right now, with my attention, I understand life. Thank you, teacher. Thank you, O enlightened one. Or something like that. All right. I think that's a nice stepping off point for me. I'm gonna go just do some other stuff. Toodaloo, baby boo.